Hello guys, this is Mrs. James helping you guys out with your classwork, which is solving multi-step equations. Today your classwork is going to be all of the even numbers. When you complete all of the even numbers, come see me to get a stamp or a splat on your paper, and you will get some bonus points for completing it all during class time. Your homework is going to be the odd numbers. That will be a separate video. Alright, so let's start with number 2. But before we do, actually, please make sure you have your name and the period and the date exactly where it's supposed to be so that it doesn't get lost. Now we can do number 2. Let's make our T-chart, please. If you follow on the notes that you have on page 6 in your journal, you can see our first step is to make our T-chart, and our second step is to simplify the expressions on either side of the equal sign. On the left side, we just have a -12. There's nothing we can really do about that. We're going to leave that one alone. But on this side, we can go ahead and combine these two since they have the same variable. We're going to leave the 2 alone and deal with the 5v plus 2v, which is going to give us a 7v. Next, we're going to take the 2 and move it over to the left. We're going to do the opposite of the positive 2, which is to subtract. If you do it to one side, you've got to do it to the other. -12 minus 2 is -14. That's just 0, so we don't need to write it. And then we have a 7v. Last thing we need to get rid of is the 7 that's right next to it. When you have a variable and a number next to each other like that, you can see that they're being multiplied. So we're going to do the opposite, which is divide. Do it to both sides to stay even. 7 divided by 7 is just 1. So it leaves us with v. We don't need to write the 1v, just the v. Then on the left we have -14 divided by 7, which is a -2. Okay, and don't forget to put a box around your answer so we can find it easily. I'm going to do a few more with you guys just to practice. I'm going to start, of course, with our T-chart. Left side, -1. Can't do anything to simplify, but we can combine -3r plus 2r, which is just going to give us a -r, which is equal to a -1. Now, is my goal to solve for r or -r? Hopefully you said r, and so we are not quite done yet. We need to get rid of that negative sign in front of the r to be able to truly solve for r. We have to remember that there's always an invisible 1 right here in front of the r, a 1. So we're going to divide by the number that we need to change, and that's going to be a -1, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive, and that's going to give us our positive r. If you divide by -1 on one side, divide by -1 on the other, and what does that make? Just a plain old 1. Okay, let's look at number 10. T-chart, just like always. Nothing we can do about 75, so we're just going to write him down right there. For the right-hand side, we have our parentheses, so we're going to go ahead and distribute to both sides. 3 times -6 is -18n, and then 3 times -5 is -15. I'm going to leave the n on the right side, so I'm going to do the opposite of -15, which is +15. I'm going to do that on both sides. 75 plus 15, we get 90, equals -18n. And that just cancels out to 0, so we don't need to write it. is being multiplied by n right there, so we're going to go ahead and do the opposite, which is to divide by negative 18. If you do it to one side, got to do it to the other side. That becomes a 1. We have n left over on the right, and on the left side we get negative 5. Number 16, T-chart. On the left-hand side, we're going to go ahead and leave negative 10n, and we're going to be adding right here 3 times 8. So let's make sure that we distribute to both. Whoops, there we go. To both of them. So we have a positive 324 plus 24n. Whoops, that's a little bit squished. Equals, on the right hand side, negative 6n plus 24. So we got a lot of 24s in there. Let's see how it all works out. We can go ahead and combine this variable with an n and this one with an n. So that's a negative 10 plus a 24. So it's going to be, we could say it the other way around. We could say 24 minus 10, which would give us a 14n, plus this 24 right here doesn't have a variable, so we're just going to go ahead and write it just like that. And on the right hand side, there's nothing that we can combine yet, so I'm going to go ahead and copy it down so that I don't mix up my sides. I want it to all stay nice and even all the way across. Okay, my next step would be to pick a side on where I want my variable, because I see an n here and an n here. So I'm going to go ahead and take that one and move it over that way. Opposite would be plus 6n and plus 6n. (14n) plus 6n right here is going to give us 20n. We're going to leave the 24 alone. And negative 6 plus 6 is just 0. We're going to leave that as 0 and not write that one. But we are just going to bring down our 24 right there. Okay, now let's figure out how we can move over this 24. Okay, we're just going to do the opposite, which is subtract 24. If you do it from one side, you got to do it to the other side. Okay, that is going to give us 0 right here, so we just have a 20n left over, which equals also 0 on this side right here. Now we're going to remove that 20 from the n. We're going to do opposite of multiply, divide. 0 divide by 20 as well. So we are left over with n equals 0. That is our answer. Please do not get that confused with no solution. 0 is a number and it is a solution. Last thing I want to talk about is the critical thinking question. Explain 2 ways that you could solve 20 equals 5, open parentheses, negative 3 plus x, close parentheses. So what I would like for you to do is to split your paper in 2 and then go ahead and copy the equation twice and do 2 separate t-charts and show me 2 different ways that you could solve. Now remember, your answer down at the bottom is going to be the same. You don't get different answers, you're just showing me a different way to solve.